Chester and Gus by Cammie McGovern. Funny sounds. I still think Gus should go back to school, but I have to admit, it's nice having him around all day. He doesn't mind if I sit near him while he watches TV. If I don't ask too many questions, he'll sometimes answer one or two. I have to ask the right ones, though. If I ask complicated questions like, how do these two people know each other? He won't know. If I say, what's that sound? He'll laugh and rock and say, a clicking, it's funny. Gus loves funny noises so much that if he doesn't hear one for a while, he'll make some himself. Funny noises make me nervous, but now I'm getting used to the ones Gus makes. They don't scare me anymore. I don't love them, but that's okay. Gus loves them, and I love Gus. One night, I follow Gus into his room, and he surprises me. What are you doing? He says. It's bedtime, I say. You're putting on your pajamas. But why are you here? For a second, I'm not sure what to say. I always come in while you get ready for bed. You do? Yes. Has he really never noticed? Do I need you here? Technically, no, just making sure. Okay. He hadn't noticed, I guess, but that's okay, I tell myself. He's noticed now. Martha speaks. I keep being surprised. Every morning I expect Sarah to send Gus back to school, and every morning she says, not today. I don't think he's ready. Gus doesn't mind. He's happy to wear his pajamas over to the sofa and spend the day there. He's found a new show called Martha Speaks. It's about a dog who eats something called alphabet soup and the next day starts talking. That's like you, he says. Except not really, I say. She's yellow and I don't really talk. You don't? He's confused, I can tell. Not out loud. I'm more like you. I talk other ways. Isn't this talking? He says. I'm not sure how to explain the difference. Our mouths don't work well. We think talk. Most people don't understand us. In fact, no one does. It's not a great way to communicate. I don't know if Gus hears me. He always stops listening if I talk too long. The problem is Sarah's getting sad and frustrated. I can tell. After researching for a while, she's decided she can't send me back to school as Gus's seizure alert dog. It's too hard to prove, she tells Mark. You need witnesses who see the dog react before the seizure happens. We've never seen that. He reacted beautifully during the fire alarm at school, but that was after the seizure. I don't know if it's worth the fight. The longer I keep Gus at home, the more I wonder if he was getting anything out of being there. I think Sarah's happy to see Gus watching TV because it's different and seems more normal than staring out the window. At first, I liked it too, because watching TV together reminds me of happy times with Penny. Now I'm surprised that Sarah thinks it's okay. Watching a lot of TV means long periods of empty time where neither one of us says anything. I keep reminding Gus about the nest we watched the birds build. There are baby birds in it now that he hasn't seen. He either doesn't hear me when I mention it or doesn't care, because he never looks. I do, though. The baby birds are big enough now that I can see their little beaks peeking up over the edge of their nest. They're waiting for their mother to bring them food. It's quite a sight. One morning, I ask if he thinks about Amelia at all. Do you wonder how Amelia is doing without us there? Who? He says, staring at the TV. This isn't good, I think. What about Mama? I say. Don't you want to go back to school and see her again? I can tell he's listening because he almost turns and looks at me. Maybe she'd let you press one of those buttons. He rocks back and forth at this idea. I know he wants to. You'd have to go back to school first. No school, he says. You can't stay home watching TV all day. It's not good for you. I'm surprised to hear myself say this, but I keep thinking about Penny. Too much TV watching wasn't good for her either. Yes, I can, he says. Watching so much TV makes him sound a little bit more like a regular kid. The minute I think this, though, he goes back to watching TV and doesn't say anything more. 2 days go by, then 3. It's hard to remember, but what yesterday and tomorrow mean, they all look the same. One morning after breakfast, I hear Sarah on the telephone. Yes, thank you, Mr. McGregor. Mark and I have come to a decision. We're not going to send Gus back to school. We're not interested in sending him away in a residential program. Instead, we're going to ask that we go ahead with the homeschool program we talked about. We'd like a certified ABA teacher here from 9 in the morning until noon. In the afternoon, I'll read paraprofessionals here working on activities of daily living. I've got 2 doctor's letters, and I've also hired a lawyer to negotiate all this with the school. I know about lawyers from the TV shows I used to watch with Penny, how they show up only when everyone is unhappy and can't get along. After she hangs up, Sarah stares at the phone for a while. There, she says. I did it. Eleanor. A few days later, a teacher named Eleanor comes to the house. Sarah talks to her for a while in her office. I sit outside the door, but I can't hear what they say. When they come out, Sarah turns off the TV and sits down next to Gus on the sofa. She tells them things are going to be a little different from now. You're not going back to school anymore, Gus. I hope this is okay with you. We just weren't sure if you were learning anything there or finding things you like to do. She waits to see if there's any reaction from Gus. There isn't. Tell her about Amelia, I scream. Tell her about Mama. He doesn't. We've talked to Mr. McGregor, and he agrees that all children still need to learn, even if they don't go to school. So he's sending some nice teachers to come here and teach you at home. Maybe it'll be Miss Winger. I want to sound hopeful, like maybe this idea isn't all bad. Today, a teacher named Eleanor is here, and she's waiting in my office. That's where you're going to work with her. From now on, there won't be any TV in the morning. You'll have to do everything she says, and then you can earn some TV time in the afternoon. My heart starts to race. This doesn't sound good. It's hard to picture Gus sitting with a stranger in Sarah's office. There's a window in there, but it's not our window. He doesn't like being alone with teachers who ask him to do things he doesn't care about. I don't stay with Gus for the first session, so I don't know how it goes. Gus doesn't speak to me afterwards, but he goes straight for the TV that Sarah has promised. For the rest of the afternoon, he watches one show after another. He doesn't say or think anything that I can hear when I ask him how it went. How to sit. After a few days, the teachers let me come into Sarah's office while they work with Gus. It isn't always Eleanor, the first teacher, who seems the strictest. There are others who bring tote bags full of flashcards and toys that are meant to catch Gus's interest. Except they've got all the wrong toys. They brought cars and music boxes and Mr. Potato Head dolls. Gus doesn't like any of those things. Gus takes one look, sees there are no sparkly pens, and doesn't care anymore what's in their bag. These women are no nonsense. They have commands they give Gus and responses they expect from him. They set up a low table with a bumpy cushion like Gus used to sit on at school, but here he's not allowed to squirm around like he used to do at school. Now they say, Gus, come sit, and pat the bumpy cushion on the chair beside them. When he doesn't move, they don't get mad. They just go over to the window where he's standing, take one of his arms, and steer him to the table. Gus, come sit, they say, and give him another chance to do it by himself. Then they push him down. Good sitting, they say. After he sits, they pull out a stack of flashcards with pictures on them. Gus, point to a cat, they say. He's got 3 choices, a fire truck, a cat, and a ball. He points to the cat. Good pointing to the cat, Gus. More cards, more pointing. Point to the chair, Gus. Point to notebook. Point to belt. I'm amazed at how many cards they have and how many times they reach down and pull more out of the bag. I keep thinking this will be over soon and we'll move on to something else, but it isn't, and we don't. All morning long, Gus sits in his chair pointing at all the pictures of words both of us know but can't say out loud. He reminds me a little bit of working on flashcards with Penny and how I was going to learn to read, which I've never done. In the evening, I hear Sarah explaining this to Mark. According to them, the whole problem with nonverbal kids is no one really knows what their receptive vocabulary is. They need to know what he's capable of before they can focus on getting him to talk. But we know Gus is smart. Have you told them how much he understands? Yes, of course. They say they need to do the test for themselves. I can tell Sarah's starting to wonder about all this. Supposedly, this is a pretty successful program. I keep thinking we should stay with this for a while and see what happens. Then I stand outside the door and listen to what they're doing, and it seems so repetitious. Like it's never going to get him talking. It's just going to drive him crazy. Mark stares down at the floor. He talks, Sarah. No, he doesn't, Mark. Not really. He can repeat what we tell him the same phrases he's heard on TV, but has he ever told us something that happened to him during the day? Has he ever told us what he's thinking? Mark shakes his head. If only I could tell them everything he said to me. One teacher who comes to the house is a little different from the others. I think she knows Gus is too smart for this, because she asks him questions that are a little harder. She lays out pictures of 3 different dogs and asks, "Hey, Gus, can you point to the dog who is in black and white?" That time, Gus makes a joke and points to me. If I could laugh, I would. It's the first joke he's made in weeks, and it's nice to hear. This teacher's name is Lindsay, and she laughs along too. "You're right. Chester isn't black and white, is he? How about the dogs in these pictures? Can you find one here?" He can, of course. I think it makes him sad doing these dumb things. It makes him miss Mama and the way she wasn't afraid to show him how complicated her machine was and how it worked, because she knew he could understand complicated things, even if he can't talk about them. Sometimes the hours with these teachers go on so long Gus can't stand it anymore and pushes all the cards off the table. Once he turned the whole table over. I'm surprised that the teachers don't get upset at him. They stay very calm and say, "You'll have to clean this up, Gus." When he doesn't do this, they take his hand and make his hand clean up every card. When they're done, they say, "Good job cleaning up, Gus." With these teachers, getting mad isn't a good way to tell them something. At the end of the week, they show Sarah their tally sheets and tell her that Gus has a receptive vocabulary of over 1,000 words. "That's excellent," they say. "Really excellent." I remember Penny talking about my vocabulary to prove how smart I was. What good does a big vocabulary do? I think that night, curling up on the floor beside Gus's bed. Gus hasn't talked to me at all since these teachers started coming. We have all these words, and neither one of us can think of anything to say. An idea. I've got an idea. If Gus can tell his parents that Ed was the main problem at school, they'll know it's okay to send him back as long as someone keeps him away from Ed's scary tunnel on the playground. If he can just say Ed, that would be enough, I think. They'd call Miss Winker and ask about Ed. She would know. Even if she didn't see what Ed did to Gus, she would know that Ed was the problem. She heard him complain about Gus getting special treatment. She knows that if Ed had a chance to be mean to Gus without anyone else seeing, he would take it. This is the hard part, though. How can I get Gus to say Ed? I get my idea while we're watching TV at the end of the day. After all this time watching, I've decided my favorite shows are commercials. They're often about food, and they're easy to follow. There's one commercial that's on a lot with a man named Crazy Eddie who sells cars for rock bottom prices. At the end, he spells his name in shaving cream on car windows. "Just remember," he says while he spells, "EDDIE is crazy. Crazy Eddie." Even though Sarah and I haven't worked on Penny's flashcards and I can only pretend to read, I know that letters spell words, and Ed sounds like the first 2 letters of Eddie. I've watched Crazy Eddie spell those letters many times, though I don't have fingers and I can't use a shaving cream can. Maybe I can do something else. At dinner time that night, I try using kibble bits dropped on the floor beside my bowl. It's messy and doesn't work. I move one kibble with my nose and all the others move with it. When I stand back, it doesn't look like 2 letters. It looks like an old blind dog who can't eat properly has been here. While everyone else is asleep, I get another idea. I pull a few items out of the trash and lay them in what looks to me, at least, like 2 clear letters. E-D. All night, I feel excited about the message I've written. I imagine Gus coming downstairs reading this and saying, "Ed?" before his brain has a chance to get confused and stop him. I picture Sarah understanding it at once and calling the school. Except it doesn't happen that way. Instead of Gus reading my note first and understanding what it says, Sarah comes down, sees the crumpled napkins of watermelon rinds, and screams, "Bad dog! No garbage!" Mark cleans it up before Gus even sees it. Now I see worse than I felt in weeks. Sarah thinks I'm no better than an untrained puppy burrowing in the trash can for food scraps. That night I don't even go upstairs and watch while Sarah helps Gus get ready for bed. Ordinarily, I think of this as part of my job. I listen to what Sarah says and to Gus's noises. I learn a lot about their day by hearing all this, but not tonight. Tonight I lie downstairs on my bed and wonder if I'll ever be able to help Gus. It does get worse. The next morning over breakfast, Sarah tells Mark that she's going to call the school today about having more curriculum sent over for the teachers to work on. I'm not sure how much more Gus can take of these drills and this testing. If we include more substantive material at home, I think his behavior will get better, don't you? Yes, I think it will, but it isn't the answer. The answer is for Gus to go back to school. Maybe, Mark says. If they could at least read some books with him or do some history, this was going to be the year he finally got to learn the American history that he loves. Now he's missing it all. And I can't turn the page. Mark shrugs. We don't know that he loves it. Yes, we do, Sarah snaps. We do know that he loves history. He loved going into Williamsburg and seeing all those people dressed in old-fashioned costumes. Why do you think he loves Frat Fest so much? He thinks those are real people from olden times who've come back to tell him stories. Does he? I wonder. I feel as if I know him so well, but of course, I don't know everything. His mother knows him better. Eleanor is the teacher today, the strictest one, and also the one who doesn't think Gus understands very much. Today she starts by laying out 3 flashcards.
Okay, Gus, can you point to the blue ball, please?
I feel my eyelids getting heavy. Recently, these sessions have gotten so boring. I've started sleeping through most of them. Eleanor doesn't seem bored, though. She thinks her tests have gone trickier, which I guess makes it interesting to her.
Gus, can you put the blue block in front of the orange block and besides the yellow block?
He does it. She smiles and writes a note on her forearms. After a while, I wake up to this.
Gus, can you make one tower of 6 blocks and another tower of fewer blocks?
I don't know what fewer means, but Gus does.
Good job, Gus,
she says, clapping her hands. This time, when I fall asleep, I wake up to screaming. Gus has pushed all the blocks and even Eleanor's notebook off the table. Eleanor doesn't seem upset, even though Gus is yelling right next to her. When he stops to take a breath, she says,
I see you're upset, Gus. After you're finished being upset, you'll have to clean this up.
I smell Sarah standing outside the door. She's trying not to make any noise, but she's standing there, I know.
Are you ready to clean this up, Gus?
Eleanor asks. More screaming. It's terrible to watch. Gus's face is red and his nose is dripping. I want to stop the crying. I also want to lick the drops away. Eleanor doesn't care about either of those things. She pushes me away and says,
No, dog,
and stands up.
I'm going to step out of the room and talk to your mother. When you're ready to clean this up, I'll come back and help.
Gus stopped crying when she pushed me away. I think he notices things like this, and maybe he even worries about me, though it's hard to tell because he doesn't say anything. In the quiet, I can hear their conversation in the hall.
He's doing so well, Sarah. This behavior is to be expected because he's making strides. I see this all the time. With any kind of progress, we're going to hit some resistance. We've had a very productive session. Very productive.
I can't hear what Sarah's saying, so I go over to Gus. You don't have to do this, you know. He doesn't say anything. If you go back to school, you could stop these boring lessons and see Mama again. Too much talking doesn't work with Gus, so I choose my words carefully. I keep talking because he's not screaming anymore. I think that means he's listening. You were happier when you went to school. Maybe you didn't love everything about it, but you liked enough things and you got through the other parts. I can't tell what's happening. His face is still red from crying. He's rocking in his chair. I move a little closer, but I'm careful. I don't get too close or try to touch him. His breathing is still loud. I don't know if he's heard what I've said. I try this. Do you want to go back to school? He holds his breath for a long time, like he's thinking about it. Maybe. It's very soft, but I hear it. His voice. I'm so happy. I can't stop myself. I put my nose on his knee and lick his hand. He pulls it away. I'm sorry, I say. I know you don't like that. You don't like that! His voice sounds louder and different this time. His mouth moved when he said it. He wasn't talking through our minds. He really talked. You just said that, I say. Maybe I shouldn't get too excited. He repeated what I said, which we've heard him do before. Still, this feels different. He didn't repeat a nonsense word or something he heard on TV. If he repeated one thing I said, maybe he can repeat something else. Maybe I can say what he needs to tell Sarah and he can repeat it. I have an idea. I can help you tell your mom what happened with Ed. You don't like that. he repeats. Why not? It's a great idea. I'll go slow. You don't like that. Okay, you don't like that idea, but why not? You don't like that. That's when I realize he's not hearing me at all. He's listening to the sound of his own voice, how it fills the room and comes back into his ears. You don't like that, he yells again. Now he's smiling. The door opens. Sarah and Eleanor are right here. What don't you like, Gus? Can you tell us what you don't like? He's laughing and rocking in his chair, so Sarah laughs a little.
What's happening here?
Eleanor asks Sarah. To her, it must look crazy. A few minutes ago, he was screaming and pushing everything off the table. Now he's laughing and rocking back and forth. I don't know, Sarah says, because of course she doesn't. No one looks at me. No one thinks maybe the dog got Gus to say a full sentence. Tell her about Ed, I shout from behind Sarah. Tell her Ed hurt me in the tunnel under the playground structure. It was only Ed, so it's okay. I can go back to school. They just have to make sure Ed doesn't come near me. He doesn't say any of it. He makes his old squealy sounds instead. Tell her Ed hurt me. That's all. Just say that. I wait. Sarah waits. Say it. Sarah doesn't mind waiting. She's been waiting his whole life to hear what he's thinking. Now, Ed hurt me. He says into his hand. Then he flaps his hand around like it's got the word and he's trying to get rid of it, but it's not Ed's name. It's not even close. It sounds the same as all of Gus's noises that don't mean anything. Sarah tells him it's okay and gives him a hug. I think you need a break, sweetheart. Eleanor, can Gus have a break and then come back and help you clean up? I suppose, she says, though I can tell she's not supposed to give him a break before he cleans up. There are lots of rules to her kind of teaching. I'd like to have a minute to talk to Gus in private, if that's okay, Sarah says. All right, Sarah says and stops at the door. Maybe the dog should come with me too, just so there aren't any distractions. No, I'm not a distraction. No, he's fine, Sarah says. He can stay. Now Eleanor is mad and clicks the door shut very loudly. Behind her, it's like everyone is saying things without using any words now. Sarah kneels in front of Gus again. This is it, babe. I need you to look at me and tell me, do you hate having teachers at home? Do you want to go back to school? I can hardly believe it. She's asking the right question. I hold my breath and wait. I don't say anything because I don't want to confuse Gus. I'm worried that when I talk, he assumes everyone can hear me. Silence. Finally, I can't stand it. School, I whisper. Gus, say I want to go to school. Gus' eyes go to the window. Can you help us, Gus? Dad and I want to know what you think. Were you ever happy at school? Yes. Tell her you had friends. You were happy sometimes. Can you make a choice, school or home? You just have to say one word. Maybe if I put out flashcards and you pointed. His whole face goes to the window. It's not even his window. He doesn't care what's out there. He just wants to escape from this room and her questions and all this pressure. You don't like it, he whispers for the umpteenth time. He's got one sentence his brain is saying today, and he wants to use it for every question he's asked. Gus, please, if I find the cards, can you point to one? She's touching his arm and looking through the flashcards spread all over the floor. If he doesn't say anything, she'll assume he wants to say home. Home is easier. It might be more boring with teachers who don't teach him anything. But home has TV, and if he can't watch TV, it has his window where he can lose himself for hours. Say something to her, I scream, but he doesn't look at me. That's when I smelled it. At first I think something has spilled, like a bottle of chemicals. It's sharp and metallic. I think maybe it's going to blow up like the lighter fluid Penny once used on a grill. That scared me. I bark to get everyone out of the room, first at Sarah, then I go over to Gus, where the smell's even stronger. Coming from the window or from something outside. I think, get away from the window. I try to push him with my head, and that's when I realize it's not the window, it's Gus. Gus smells like chemicals, like he's going to blow up. I bark for Sarah to help. What is it, Chess? What's wrong? I keep barking. Calm down, she says. Eleanor comes back in. All right, I have to tell you, this is why I can't have the dog in here during lessons. We'll lose ground every time he goes off like this. I hardly hear what they're saying because I have to focus on Gus. With all my energy, I have to get him to hear me. Sit down, I say. Get away from the window. He's starting to wobble. He's swaying towards the glass pane. Move, I scream, and then I bark like crazy. Sarah's up just in time. As Gus starts to fall towards the pane of glass, she grabs him. He's having another seizure, and this time we can all see what it looks like. The shaking, the twitching, and the white bubbles in the corner of his mouth. Even though it's hard to watch, there's no sound at all, which means my heart stays calm, and I do the only thing I can think of. I stretch out beside him with my face near his and wait for it to be over.